I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the September meeting for the Upper Mount Bethel Township Planning Commission. We'll do the introductions as usual. I always go and introduce everybody. On my left, starting with Commissioner Frank Klein. Next to him is Commissioner Faith Sariski. On my left here is Commissioner Randy Crane. On my right is Commissioner James Potter. Next to him is our engineer, stand-in engineer, Dan Willis. And on his right is our solicitor, Ron Karazak. And of course, right next to him is the lovely Cindy Beck, our recording secretary. I am Commissioner Robert T. Now that the introductions are all done, roll call. I'll open it up for public comment. And public comment tonight, I have the clock. It's 3 minutes. I will ask people not to try to filibuster us for anything, and we can try to give everybody a chance to speak. Is anybody interested in doing public comment? Please step to the podium and give us your name. Charlie?
Charles Cole, 6 Riverton Road. I see under approved in minutes, RPL drip irrigation field recommendation. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant, what action, but I'm hoping there's going to be a robust discussion of the drip field and what it means and the pros and cons.
Thank you for your comment, Charlie. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm up here, Mr. Teal. Michael Anufrak, 43 Summerfield Drive. When I printed out tonight's agenda, I saw the reference to the RPL drip irrigation field as well, and it says recommendation. I don't recall any presentation and discussion regarding this matter. As you know, there have been 9 hearings on this matter at the zoning board and the 10th hearing scheduled for tomorrow. And I know already there's going to be an 11th meeting sometime in October. Since I do not know if the planning commission automatically sends a recommendation to the zoning hearing board, and if so, I hope that you would not send a favorable recommendation. This industrial wastewater drip field is located uphill from my property. This plan will be putting over 100,000 gallons of wastewater, yes, it's treated, on the field. With heavy rains now, there is an overflow of water from the farm onto the wetlands and a stream that runs from the farm through my property and ends in a tributary of, I believe, the Delaware. My fear is that this will have an immediate and detrimental impact on my wife's health. My wife happens to have cystic fibrosis and it is dangerous for harmful bacteria and, I can't remember the other word, that gets windblown.
Mold spores.
Mold spores, thank you. And the value and saleability of my home. Even RPO's expert designing the system could not guarantee there would not be an incident, in his words. My word would be an environmental disaster, since RPO says they have no idea what companies nor what chemicals will be used in their facilities. So bottom line, I would hope that you would not recommend the zoning board grant the special exception. RPO needs to put the drip field, the special exception that RPO needs to put the drip field on the Angle farmland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Michael. Is there anyone else?
Metzger, 114 Cedar Court. The applicant applied for a special exception in front of the zoning hearing board in December of 2022.
Please speak up.
The applicant applied for a special exception to the zoning hearing board in December of 2022. According to our zoning ordinance, one of the first steps that is supposed to be taken is the package is supposed to be put in front of the planning commission for their recommendation and comment. What I'd like to do tonight is just basically give you an overview of the community's position on this. When this was, the announcement for the hearing was put out, I circulated a petition amongst the 18343 and 18013 zip codes with persons over 18 years old. And the question was public objection to the wastewater treatment plant and industrial waste in Upper Mount Bethel Township. Roughly 750 signatures were put on that petition. Statistically speaking, that's over 99% confidence that that is the position of the community. So we're dealing with something that the community takes very seriously. So what are they concerned about? As you know, this isn't at the beginning of the zoning hearing board. This is really at the end. And they kind of put this over here as just a way to check the box that says that, yeah, we put this in front of the planning commission. But the residents, no official agency has rendered opinion on RPL's waste disposal plan that we have seen presented yet. Of what has been presented, the experts have questioned the methodologies and the results of the applicant's data. So there's doubt. There's a battle amongst experts. Okay? There is a report that shows that this drip field is already negatively influencing property values. Okay? There is no data to show that the industrial waste effluent will not get into the major aquifer that resides underneath the R1 zone. And that's another key point. One of the major drinking water aquifers sits right underneath that. Okay? So we are very much concerned, and you cannot treat this in an ordinary fashion. So we're hoping some very serious recommendations, because as Mike Onofrak said, the engineer couldn't guarantee that effluent wouldn't make its way into the aquifer. Well, there is a way that it could.
Mark, you have 15 seconds.
You prevent industrial waste from going in there. Well, anyhow, the designer of that system basically said that he would put a process in place where this wouldn't happen. And I just calculated.
Mark,
okay,
your time is up.
all right, well, one more.
No, your time is up.
Look,
You know that.
these systems are not fail-proof, and there's been failures even in the counties where Mr. Ebert has designed systems. And I'm going to put this in there for the record.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? If no one else, moving right along. We'll go into the RPL irrigation field. Oh, the minutes, I forgot the minutes, sorry. July 17th, 2024 minutes, has everybody had a chance to look at them? Do I hear a motion on the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Motion is made by Frank. To accept them?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Faith. Anyone else? All those in favor? Aye.
I abstain.
All right. Minutes were approved. All right, we'll move into the RPL drip irrigation field recommendation. This is a recommendation. I'd like to have the commissioners speak first. And I hear
What do they want to present?
Jimmy.
Yeah, what do they want to present?
Good evening, Rob Lewis from Kaplan Stewart. I represent River Point Logistics. It's at the board's discretion as to how we proceed. I'm prepared and ready to make a couple-minute presentation if you'd like. I'll take your direction.
A couple minutes?
Sure.
I'll give you 3 minutes.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So very quickly, on December 2nd, 2022, RPL in fact filed an appeal from a November 4th, 2022 zoning determination, and we coupled that with a request for a special exception to permit what under your ordinance is defined as an essential service in the R1 district. On May 15th, the zoning officer actually issued a revised determination, which rendered actually our appeal moot, leaving our request for the special exception. After many extensions, a hearing on that special exception commenced on February 27th of 2024. And as I think you all know and heard already this evening, we've now had a total of 9 hearings already on that application, with a 10th hearing scheduled for tomorrow night. The application itself was previously reviewed by the township engineer, who issued a letter dated January 15th of 2023. And in fact, the application was previously scheduled for review by the Planning Commission, but was tabled several times, and no formal recommendation was ever issued. So that's what brings us back here this evening. During the hearings before the zoning hearing board, the lack of a formal recommendation by the Planning Commission was raised by the Township Special Counsel, so we were advised to return to the Planning Commission for that purpose. In anticipation of coming before you this evening, our engineer resent over additional copies of the plans that originally accompanied our submission. Those were sent over on September 6th, and that's actually what I have up on the board to the extent we need to discuss it. 1 or 2 more minutes, I don't think I'm too far in. I'm happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have. I think I can answer most, if not all of them. But really quickly, RPL, as you know, owns 770 acres or so of land that's zoned industrial. RPL has received preliminary land development approval to subdivide that property and develop that property for about 6.3 million square feet of industrial buildings. There's no current public sewer available to serve that project. As part of that project, RPL has filed with DEP a planning module for the treatment and disposal of sanitary waste. That planning module is currently pending before DEP has received reviews and has been resubmitted. And it's also been reviewed by the township's engineer. The planning module, which has been provided obviously to the township, goes into great detail about the facilities that RPL intends to construct and then dedicate to the Upper Mount Bethel Township Municipal Authority. Those facilities include a collection system for waste generated by each building. Each of those collection systems has built into it several safety protocols to ensure that any waste being collected is biologically treatable.
You're almost up.
And non-hazardous. There is no direct gravity distribution from those buildings into the public system. Would you like me to?
You're done.
That's fine. I tried to go as quickly as I could.
Well, to that, you say it's a whole gravity system? I
In
didn't
fact,
see,
it's just what I'm saying is it's just the opposite. Out of each of the buildings, everything will actually be pumped up to a separate system. And part of what that does, it allows, by forcing all of the waste that comes out of each individual building, to have to go into a pump. That's where the first testing is done of that effluent to understand what is in it. It's the first chance to catch anything that may have gone into it that shouldn't be in it. So there are safety protocols there. It then is pumped up to a central location, and then gravity falls down to the batch plant. There's an equalization tank at that point, which again has safety protocols built in to again capture.
that's the 300,000 gallon tank or something?
That's the additional, that's the storage tank on top of, next to the batch plant.
And
So
that's
we have-
down by River Road? Or where,
It's-
I couldn't find it on the drawing. Is it on the drawing?
Yep, it's right here. So
Okay.
that portion of it stays on the industrial property, that's here, and I would roll up with that too. So that's still on the industrial.
And that's 300,000 gallons?
We have to have certain additional storage capacity for maintenance. If the plant needs to be maintained, you have to be able to hold back a certain quantity of wastewater so that you can do that maintenance. So you've got, those tanks are utilized both for equalization, but also for emergency situations where you have to do maintenance.
And it's properly diked? A dike?
That's a fully internal tank. It is an enclosed tank. It is not, that is not an external pond. That is an actual tank.
Yeah, but that tank still needs to be in a diked area.
I can't speak to that, I'm sorry. That's one detail that I wouldn't know. I would have to ask my engineer to explain that in more detail.
Okay. So essentially you're saying that there's gonna be like 13 different treatment plants to treat the industrial waste to make it a municipal waste treatment plant.
No. No, there's no treatment occurring at each of the buildings. There's simply going to be pumps, and there's also monitoring at each of those locations. There's no treatment occurring until it gets to the plant that you see on this plan.
What kind of monitoring?
The planning module goes into greater detail than I can, but monitoring for any types of contaminants that are not biologically treatable. And as Mr. Ebert explained in his testimony at the zoning hearing board, there is what's called a MIP, a municipal, excuse me,
Industrial Pre-Treatment Program.
municipal industrial pre-treatment
Please,
program.
keep it down from the crowd.
It was very helpful though on that. So I forgot my acronym. So once this is turned over to the municipal authority and run by the municipal authority, part of the organization and the management of that system will require each and every occupant of a building to enter into the MIP, the municipal pre-treatment program, which details what can and cannot be released in their wastewater. So the monitors at each building are making sure that what is coming out of each building is consistent with the MIP. The primary concern there is to make sure that any effluent leaving those buildings is biologically treatable, that it does not have any contaminants that would either disturb the biological treatment at the plant or otherwise cause contamination by the time it got to the drip field. So you have that initial monitoring right at each building so that you can centralize and detail exactly where that contaminant was coming from. You can shut down the system and deal with the contaminant at that location. The system that has been designed by Mr. Ebert then has redundancies. They have more monitoring, again, when all those pumps come up to the top and you get to where the gravity is going to start down to the batch treatment plant, so you have monitoring again, and then you have monitoring at the batch plant to make sure that before that effluent gets in, that is checked again to make sure that there are no contaminants, because those contaminants can disturb the biological treatment system. So there, you could again shut down the system if there was a contaminant detected. You can then deal with the contaminant without having that get through the treatment plant or disturb the treatment plant, and certainly never getting to the drip field. On the way out, there's one additional monitoring station to make sure that when the treated effluent comes out, it still meets all the criteria that are prescribed by DEP. Again, making sure that nothing gets to the drip field that's not supposed to get to the drip field.
So does the DEP decide on what kind of monitoring goes into the initial
DEP
testing?
will review each and every aspect of this entire
Each of
system,
those 13?
along with Township's engineer and then along with the municipal authority's engineer. All of the protocols will be reviewed by all three, not just our engineer.
Okay. Now, I mean, these parcels of land, say there's additional treatment needed, and you have to treat it with certain chemicals, and tanks. Is there enough property on each of those facilities?
Any waste that does not meet the MIP regulations has to be hauled off and disposed of elsewhere. It will not go through our system.
So we can tell that facility they have to put in certain tanks or something?
Correct. So and that happens for each tenant, as I mentioned, each occupant of any of those buildings has to enter into the MIP. And the MIP prescribes what can and cannot be released. So if you end up having a tenant that may have a process that generates a waste that is not permitted to be in the system, before they can execute the MIP, before they can connect to our system, they will have to demonstrate how they are going to handle those other wastes, which is trucking it off and having it disposed of elsewhere.
Another question, we have extremely hard water in this township. How do you keep the drip irrigation field with all this piping? Because I imagine it's relatively small diameter pipe. How do you keep it from calcifying?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that Fred Ebert, our engineer, did discuss it briefly in his testimony in terms of how clean the water is by the time it gets to those drip emitters, and his experience with them, and the fact that they do not clog by the time they get it there. But hard water was one that I have not heard yet, so I'm not exactly sure how that's handled.
I'm sure that's gonna happen.
And again, any maintenance that needs to be done on the drip field, if those emitters do have any problems, that's where that 300,000 gallon tank, to be able to hold back wastewater while any maintenance is done, that's why that tank is present.
One last question. This drip irrigation field, so 80 acres?
Well,
something like
the
that.
farm itself is roughly 90 acres. We're only using about 22 acres of it for actual drip irrigation.
Okay, from what I understand, you felt that that was the optimum place to put that.
Correct.
You're saying there's no other area in the other 800 acres in the I2 zone that, okay, maybe it would have taken 60 acres for the drip field?
We're
In
not,
other words, why do you have to put it in R1 zone?
well, we have not stated, and I don't think our testimony was ever to the effect that there is nowhere else to put it, because that's not our obligation. It's not to demonstrate that we can't put it anywhere else. That's not what we're saying. But the soils here in this location were optimal for what we were trying to do.
Okay, so it could be put in the
There-
I2 zone.
There may be places within our I2 property that can handle some of this drip irrigation. Numerous parts of our I2 zone are heavily wooded, which presents a challenge for anything underground. It's rockier soil. The soils were not as conducive to what we were trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Saruski, do you have any questions? Commissioner Crane?
Yeah, what's the lifespan on this kind of system? What's the lifespan of this system?
I do not know the answer to that question. I apologize. I will try and find that answer.
Okay, and what goes wrong on these systems?
Every system is going to have challenges, any moving parts, right? So take out the mechanical, you're always gonna have a mechanical issue, a pump can fail, there's redundancies built into the system. Mr. Ebert testified to all those redundancies. If somehow you got a contaminant in, this is biologically treated, so you essentially have bugs, is the best way to describe it. Bugs are what are treating the effluent as it comes in. If you have something that disturbs that, you could technically have to restart that entire biological treatment system. So that's a failure that could occur. But again, that's where all the monitoring is there to make sure that it is contained before it ever leaves the plant and heads to the drip field. And that's why you also have the storage system, so that once that is detected, you have adequate time to make sure that you can handle that and get the system back online. And this is, this is professionally monitored and managed. This is not, and it's going to be dedicated to the municipal authority. It's going to be handled as a public facility. This is not privately owned.
Mhm. I think someone mentioned that there's a stream that runs through the property.
I believe that there is a stream below the property between Mr. Onafrock's property and the farm.
And it runs downhill towards the residential? Is there any part of, can you place it so it wouldn't?
I believe Mr. Onafrock's property generally is down gradient of the farm generally. The testimony from Mr. Ebert as well as from our soil scientists, their expert opinions were that the effluent here will not impact the wetlands, will not impact Mr. Onafrock's property.
You can go on.
If I can, to that point, so we have 3 different experts that were involved in the initial design. We have Mr. Ebert, our sewer engineer. We have Mr. Joe Valentine, who is our soil scientist. And then we also had our geologist, Jeff Clark, all of whom have issued reports detailing their analysis of property and of the system, all of which is included in the planning module that has gone to DEP. And I think one piece of information that's important to point out, their analysis of this farm showed that we had the available capacity for up to 179,000 gallons of water per day to be treated on that site, to be disposed of on that site. And our limitation at this point is 101,000. So we're not trying to push the boundaries. Every single thing in their testimony demonstrated the conservativeness of their analyses to make sure that they were exceeding the standards that they were being held to, whether that is the depth of soil before you get to water table, the amount of capacity, the bearing capacity of the soils. In every instance, they were being conservative to make sure that their system was successful.
Do you do any testing on the drip irrigation field itself?
Have we so far?
No. You said you have monitors and sensors as it goes out of
Correct.
the plant to the drip irrigation. Do you test the soil at the drip irrigation?
We do have obligations through DEP to have certain monitoring wells on our site to understand, what the impacts are to the soils and to the subsurface. So that will be ongoing as long as the drip fields are in operation. There are monitoring wells monitoring that. And those reports have to be reviewed by the municipal authority engineer and periodically also have to be submitted to DEP for their review.
Okay. And then what if something happened where something did get into the drip irrigation field?
Again, those monitoring wells would be the way that would be determined, but again, it's going to have to make itself through several different levels of monitoring to get to that point. But it would eventually be picked up on our side of the property line through those monitoring wells.
Do they test for the PFAs? That's becoming quite a big issue.
My recollection of Mr. Hebert's testimony was that was not one of the requirements DEP for that testing. That's my recollection of his testimony, but I'm not 100% certain on it. There were certain metals that I know people were interested in, and I don't believe DEP was requiring testing for those either.
Jim?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question or two? I just want to try to
Yes.
catch up.
Go ahead.
You said there were 3 experts that testified, Mr. Ebert, Joe Valentine, a soil scientist, and who was the third?
Jeff Clark, he's our professional geologist.
And he's what, a geologist?
Yes, sir.
And you just said that you're proposing a conservative estimate as to amount of gallonage. Again, what are you authorized to use, and what are you in fact proposing?
Mr. Karasek, so far we are not technically authorized. Our application before DEP is still pending. And I believe our current planning module is proposing 101,000 and change gallons per day. And the initial analysis through Mr. Valentine's soil analysis and Mr. Eber's design, I believe, came to a calculation of about 179,000 gallons of capacity.
That's it, I just was trying to, right as you were talking, I couldn't catch up. Thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Potter?
I really have no comments. I haven't really been following the hearings. I guess there was 9 of them or whatever. But I'll make a motion that we go with the recommendation of the zoning hearing board. I mean, I haven't really been following.
Your reasoning is because they've run extensive meetings? Is that your reasoning?
Right, and I haven't really followed. I mean, they've been going 6 or 8 months, whatever, 9 months, I have no clue. haven't
believe we
really
have.
been following. They're a whole separate entity from us.
I believe we have some of the zoning hearing people here. How many months did that last so far?
We began in February of this year, and it is ongoing. We've had 9 hearings. Tomorrow night will be the 10th.
You've had 9 hearings already. Have you had extensive testimony from
Very.
good and bad?
We've had very extensive testimony. We put on 3 expert witnesses. The objectors have also put on several of their own experts and several lay witnesses. I believe at this point we are actually concluded testimony. Public comment is yet to be completed, and then there will be closing statements by both sides.
I'm aware that you've had extensive testimony of what I hear. And I think that the zoning hearing board would probably be more qualified than anything. Are you recommending that we,
Go with the
in your
zoning hearing
motion,
board recommendation.
your motion and then is to send it along to the zoning hearing board with a recommendation that we are comfortable with whatever they
Just let them
decide.
make the decision. I mean, I haven't been following it.
All right. And,
If I may, Mr. Chair, that's sort of gilding the lily. Will, the zoning hearing board is asking for this commission's recommendation.
that is a recommendation.
Now, I can say we're gonna send it to the zoning hearing board with no recommendation, you can do that, but you can't say we're gonna send it to the zoning board for your recommendation. That's not what it's here for. They're looking for your recommendation, so they can then decide what would be the better thing to do.
Well, then, maybe Mr. Potter wants to rephrase it.
Well, we should have been invited to the hearings or told to attend the hearings so we can give a recommendation.
So you wanna send it along with no recommendation?
That's fine with me too, absolutely.
Is that what you're saying?
You know, I would have preferred that we had another option in all of this and looking at something or an area in the I2 zone. Okay, maybe it would be a little more property, you might have to give up one of the building lots or, you know what I'm saying? Why put the people in an R1 zone at risk, right? It doesn't, I think even the special exception piece, I mean, doesn't it say that, you know, it's not supposed to impact negatively on the neighborhood? I mean, it's already impacted negatively. It's not supposed to.
I understand where Mr. Potter has come from, that we did not sit through 9 hearings or have access to the local, all of the expertise of what they have. And he feels more comfortable, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, more comfortable with the people that are on the zoning hearing commission who have had privy to all of these things to make the call on this. Unless you want to sit through 9 more hearings here, and I don't think we're going to accomplish anything more than what they have already heard. They may decide negatively. They may decide positively. I don't know. I haven't talked to any of them, even though my brother-in-law sits on one, but I have not discussed with him or anybody else what they intend to do. And I would feel more comfortable with, as you say, no recommendation,
You make
and
a
let them
recommendation.
decide. They've already gone through 9 months of it, with attorney after attorney and expertise, and I think they've had qualified people from both sides, proponents of it, and people that are in favor of it, people that are not. How much more can we really add than what they're already seeing?
Well, let me ask you this. Has there been any evaluations done on in the I-1 area for putting in drip irrigation? You must have, if you're saying, yeah, we could, but it's not optimal, you must have looked at it, right?
There were certain pieces of our property that at one point we did do some
So
testing on.
you could put it there.
Potentially, but that's not the question that's before you. The question before you is whether or not we meet the standards in your ordinance to utilize this piece of ground, which we own, for drip irrigation, which your ordinance says is specifically permitted. That's it. It's not a one or the other.
You're asking the township to give you an exception.
Well,
That's a little different.
a special exception is a
I mean,
misnomer, sir. It is a
If you wanted to
permitted
put it in
use.
the I-1 zone, hey, have at it. And we could all go home and get going and put in your park and whatever.
A special exception is a legislatively permitted use. It is not a variance. We're not asking for a variance, and those are two very different things here. The standards are very different. A special exception is something that we are entitled to if we meet any of the objective criteria in the ordinance. There's only 2 objective criteria for this special exception. It has to do with landscaping and parking. That's it. We have demonstrated that compliance. And so it is not a matter of whether or not you might rather see it on some other property. It has been determined that essential services, including sewer facilities and disposal fields, are an appropriate use in an R1 zoning district. That's all that we are seeking to do here.
See, this is all semantics. I mean, you're asking the zoning hearing board to, they're there to safeguard the interests of the residents of the township. You're asking them to rule in your favor to put that in there. So
Correct.
obviously, it's gonna negatively impact on all of those people up there.
I don't agree.
Look,
I do not agree.
what? You don't think the drip irrigation field is gonna
No, I
have
do
a
not.
negative impact? It's certainly putting the people at risk.
I disagree, and the testimony from Mr. Ebert was exactly the opposite. In fact, the objector's own expert witness said as long as it is installed, maintained, and operated appropriately in accordance with DEP regulations, it will not negatively affect the public health, safety, and welfare. Their own expert testified to that.
I will bet the farm there's gonna be upsets. It's a biological system, there are gonna be upsets. I put money, I'd take that to the bank.
Well, okay.
I don't know how better to say this. Can you look at putting this drip irrigation field in the I-1?
We are committed to
I2
putting it
zone.
in this location because it is legislatively a permitted use of this farm field.
Okay.
That's
So-
my opinion.
Everybody is entitled to their.
You had mentioned the application to DEP is still pending,
Yes,
so when did you file it, what stage is it in?
it has gone through at least 2 rounds of review already with DEP. I think the latest resubmission to DEP was probably June of this year, was the most recent resubmission to DEP. And the township engineer receives a copy and reviews those as well. And so none of this happens unless DEP ultimately approves it, obviously. I mean, DEP is the ultimate arbiter as to whether or not this entire system is approved.
That's for the planning module.
Correct.
Okay, so we really can't act on anything for the land development until we have a planning module.
That's a whole nother discussion. I don't think you want that tonight.
Okay. There is still a motion on the floor. Mr. Potter, do you want to rephrase your motion?
I mean, I would make a motion that we give no recommendation. I mean, we haven't, or I haven't kept up on any of the hearings and listened to if they had 3-hour hearings or 2-hour hearings or whatever, the 20 hours of testimony and so on and so forth.
Mr. Chair, that motion is a valid motion. So you can see if there's a second and then if there's any action on it.
I'll second it.
I would vote in the affirmative if somehow it's conveyed that there was at least one member of the board that had some strong reservations. Is that possible?
We can always, they made the motion, I second. Further discussion? Is that we do
I think
discussion?
there's a better way of doing this. I don't know. I don't know how else to.
I don't know how else to. Any other comments?
I think the better solution would have been to hook up to Portland or put in a municipal system, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Portland does not have
Well-
adequate capacity to serve this project, unfortunately.
Well, I think eventually,
They don't have adequate
Capacity to serve this
I
project.
think their problem is they're oversized. From what I've seen,
We have
their
been,
flows.
we have been advised that they do not have adequate capacity to serve this project.
I think they do, but
They
are reluctant to use it, I think.
But we've beat this dead horse, and here we are, so.
All right. Well, the motion's on the floor, it's been made and seconded. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion's been made unanimously.
Thank you.
This passed 5-0.
Moving right along. Subdivisions. Subdivisions is my knowledge right now that subdivisions A, River Point Logistics, has been asked to be tabled. Subdivision B, Race Minor Subdivision.
We gotta make a motion to table about
I'll make a motion, we table River Point.
Second?
Second by Randy. All's in favor?
Aye.
it.
That's been officially tabled. It expires on October 26th. Do you want to extend?
Yes, we'll be sending the regular letter for extension.
Mr. Karazak, would you like to grant an extension on that?
Well, again, we don't grant the extensions, the applicant gives the extension to
Yeah,
us
well,
because it's
that's
their
our-
project.
She just said they
Uh,
would.
The-
She said that you-
And Ms. Spector has
Please note
been
that.
a person of her word, so if she said the extension will be granted, that
Yes.
they'll send forms to Ms. Beck. I don't know if you want to address the other River Point ones under land development, just to get them off of the agenda, so if anyone is here on those, they don't have to hang around, but that's your call.
Yeah, so we're,
Yeah, please do.
we're, we granted an extension. I have to confer with our engineers to see how much more time, if we need 60 or 90 days. But the other items under the land development section, we would also be doing the same, timeframe for extension on those, and we're tabling those.
Under C, D, E, and F,
Correct.
they're granting us an extension. Do we have a motion on that, or do we need a motion? I'll make a motion that we accept their extension.
Second it.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, all of those are off of the table now. All right, all of the land development for River Point has been tabled at this point. And now we're going back to Race Minor Subdivision. Please come forward.
Hi, Brian Peischer with State Line Engineering. We had submitted the plan a couple months ago. We were in front of planning, got a review letter. There was an issue with the variance for lot size. Subsequent to that meeting, we applied for the variance, and last month attended the zoning hearing board where they granted us the variance for the lot size. Subsequent to that, we prepared a response letter to the engineer's review letter. I think the biggest issue was the variance. But as you can see in the response letter, we've addressed all the comments. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
So, Mr. Peischer, are you saying the variance for the lot size was granted?
It was.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Their August 27th meeting.
We have a letter from you, sir, about a number of waiver requests. Do you want the planning commission to act on these? I see two of them. The planning commission can actually grant because they deal with scale. The other two would be a recommendation. If you're prepared to do that tonight, fine. If not, that's up to
Yeah,
you.
I don't know, I don't remember if they were acted on, but, at the first meeting, but yeah, if we can act on all of those, or at least,
Let me check my notes. I simply don't remember, but let's see here. All right,
I do have some notes here
Yeah.
from Justin.
I have July 17,
Yep.
the 302-413 waiver was granted.
Yep.
And then again, on that same day, the 302-426 waiver was granted. The septic system and the road dedication, I have notes here that they were going to be requested, but not, oh no, okay. On the 302-46, the requirement for the reserve septic site testing, that also was recommended for approval on a 4-0 vote by Mr. Klein making the motion and Mr. Keel seconding. So the only one I don't have is the road dedication. That it looks like that was going to be requested, but let's see what.
We
our
had made a
engineers-
subsequent request. That was not in our original letter. That comment came in the township engineer's review letter. And as we explained at the last meeting, the agricultural conservation easement encumbers the property up to the 16.5-foot existing right-of-way. So that property is encumbered. I don't believe that we can dedicate that to the township. I know the township generally does it as an easement. I don't know that we can put another easement over top of an existing agricultural conservation easement. So we discussed that a little bit, and I think, at least my understanding was that we would just ask for a waiver of that requirement.
Yes, you're right. What Justin has here for me is that was going to be granted, and we take no exceptions to that.
Okay.
So that's one of the items that has to happen tonight, is we have to get that waiver, action on that waiver, I think.
Right, so there would have to be action by the commission on whether or not they want to recommend that waiver regarding roadway dedication, and then that will take care of all the waivers.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That being said, the rest of the items on here are conditions that we can handle. I don't think we did not get to review the plans yet. I don't know, we didn't get them in time to really look at them before this meeting. But from what I'm reading on the letter, it doesn't seem that anything is out of line here that can't be addressed from a condition standpoint. So, I think if the planning commission wanted to recommend conditional preliminary final approval tonight, that would be appropriate. But that's up to the chairman.
You're good with that?
I don't have a conditional approval form with me, and I would like to have that with me. Can you get one? Well, okay, then go get one, and we'll check it.
The township secretary will retrieve that for you, and
And we'll see then if in fact the conditions are such that the planning commission is comfortable with making a recommendation on this. Based upon the resubmission on August 28th, the time would normally not expire until November 26th. So that's why it wasn't on my hit parade to bring in a form. But if Ms. Beck has a form, we'll go through it and we'll see whether or not we can get you to agree to this, and it will come off of your agenda and go on to supervisors. All right, so let me go through this agreement for conditional approval form with our engineer and see what items need to be checked, and then we'll see if the applicant agrees to those conditions. And if so, we would ask the applicant's representative to sign the form, and then the matter can be voted on by the commission. So, I'm looking at this form. So, number 1 is planning module approval and or approval of exemption. Is that done or need to be done yet?
I believe the forms were all signed, and discussion with Cindy, they're gonna be sent down to,
So that still has to be done.
still has to be a condition, correct?
Okay. All right. And how about PNDI?
We've cleared all those clearances.
All right, so we don't need to worry about that. Sewage enforcement officer review and or approval.
I believe he's okay with it since he signed the module, but I did not get a review letter from him.
What, do you want me to put it to be done, and if it's been done, then it doesn't matter?
Yeah, again, I'm assuming since he signed the module, that.
I would
everything is
agree,
in
but
order.
let's put to be done to be safe.
Sure.
Zoning officer review and or approval.
We've retained the variance and that's been noted to the plan.
Lehigh Valley Planning Commission review or additional review.
We have that,
Northampton County Conservation District review.
not required,
Any soil erosion, sedimentation, or other stormwater plans.
not required,
PennDOT highway permit or township driveway permit.
no,
Any other permits like NPDES.
no.
All right, here's now compliance with the township engineer review letter of, let's see that last letter he did. All right, that was July 16. However, you sent your follow-up letter of August 28th. So let's say compliance with the conditions set forth in applicant's engineer letter of August 28th.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just wanna put the July 16th engineer's letter, I
All
mean,
right.
our response is directly to all those comments and,
All right, then let's do that just to be safe.
It was July 16th.
Right. Okay, any dedication of streets?
waiver of that,
Any unification or merger deeds?
no,
All right, any grant or easement for rights of way? We just talked about that.
no,
No. All right, any improvements agreement?
no,
All right, any maintenance agreement?
no,
How about park recreation, open space fees?
that I don't know. I'm sure there's a rec fee, right? I don't know, probably for
Well,
the building.
for
permit.
one lot, two lots, how many
One lot.
lots? One
One
lot.
lot.
All right, so then we're gonna then do for one lot. Monuments, pins, and markers to be set in the field and certified in writing by applicant's
That'll be a
engineer.
condition, we'll do that.
That
prior-
has to be
prior
done,
approval.
okay. Other conditions, I'm gonna put saldo waivers to be granted and noted on the plan. Any other conditions that you can think of that would need to be added?
I think that's it.
All right, and then plan to be signed, plan to be notarized. So let me bring this to you. Mr. Fleischer, I want you to take a peek, make sure that I completed it correctly. And if so, then if you could give me your John Henry on the bottom as authorized representative, and then we'll send you a copy in due course. Just make sure all the checks are okay. Good?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the record should reflect that the agreement for conditional plan approval form has been signed by the applicant's authorized representative, Mr. Fleischer, with the various conditions as noted. And this matter is able to be acted upon for a motion to recommend conditional, preliminary, and final plan approval.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second.
Made by
So moved.
Hank.
Yeah.
Motion been made by Frank and second by Faith. Other further discussion? If none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. 5-0.
Thank you all.
Okay, so, make sure you make some time, Mr. Fleischer, to be at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
Do you know what the date of that is?
It'll be second Monday,
Second Monday?
so in case there's any questions, you're there to answer them. Usually there are not, but just to be safe,
We'll be there.
that would be good.
Thank you.
That would be this, thank you, I would do the second Monday, because they're out so far. You know, out to November. Okay. All right, well, that removes that matter then off of this agenda moving forward.
And we're moving to land development, Lamtech. You're on board.
Good evening. My name is Bernard Telekovich. I'm with Hanover Engineering. We're the engineers for Lamtech. I have with me Rich Malone, and he is a representative of Lamtech. The If I may ask, and I hope that my presentation's only about 3 minutes, I see the timer's at 44 minutes. If you can reset that, please, so I can keep it to 3 or 5 minutes. I don't want to waste your time. It should be short.
I will give you an extra 10 seconds.
Okay. I'll make sure it's 3 minutes. How's that? Or less?
How's that?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Again, we're here for simply waiver requests. We came to the board several times with the sketch plan and a preliminary plan earlier, got some comments back, and one of the comments, of course, was some of the waivers we need. We've gone through the process, the waiver list, the letter, the notices, the statement indicating that we did this under oath and everything else. I don't think the township has any issue with that. I do have copies of some of the stuff we submitted to prove that if needed. 5 waivers that we requested are listed in the letter. One is allow us to come in with a preliminary final under section 304. We've been here before. I'm not going to go through the argument. We've been here 2 times before, and I think we're pretty far along. The second is a location of the existing man-made features on the site within 100 feet of the plan. That was brought up because of some utility issues that were pretty close that were not shown. We will show the utilities. It's only a partial waiver for, let's say, non-pertinent items that are within that 100 feet but wouldn't be needed or wouldn't be affected by our project. The third waiver we request is a man-made slopes not to exceed 3 to 1. We have a small area where there is the potential for 3 to 1 being greater than that. That's on the east side, pointed out by Justin. And that, in my opinion, is something that will go to the other contour issue we talked about, or the other dimensional plan issue we're going to talk about. So it's going to be a small area. If in fact we feel it's too steep, we'll put a little retaining wall there. If in fact it goes 2.5 to 1, we will end up just stabilizing that more properly and everything else. The fourth item is a runoff calculations item. It is not much different from what you really use. It's just simply saying we're going to use the Atlas 14 most up-to-date data, which is a little more conservative than the 2004 NOAA type data. I don't think there's any difference or any problem with that. Most people do that nowadays. The fifth and final, and I still have 45 seconds left, is the contour intervals on the plans. In areas of concern, we do the contours at 1 feet. And I think that's for detail. You just turned it away from me. I think that's for detail, and I don't think that that creates any problems with our plans. In the areas where the contours are close, we're going to say let's keep them at the 1 foot and only label the 5 feet. It's not much of a difference. If it's more needed by the engineer, if it's determined needed by the engineer, we'll be happy to do that as we move along with our next presentation, our next submission. That's it. I'm going to request that we get either the approval for that, particularly on the dimensional plan stuff, or recommendation on a few of the other items, and that's up to you guys to decide which one belongs where.
I have an input from our engineer.
Sure. In my discussions with Josh Coyle on these problems, or these waiver requests, he said that we have no exceptions for any of them. We're fine with the preliminary final. Pretty much everything that Bernard has said is accurate, and there's really not a worry. The only one that we wanted to talk about, and I wanted to bring this up to Bernard, was the fifth waiver request for number 9 about the contour intervals. Justin wanted me to make sure you understood that our question on that item was really about clarity, and that he has having a hard time understanding the way it was graded. Not necessarily, he doesn't know that a waiver is really required there. It just needs, the plan need to be more clear.
I wasn't sure either.
Yes. So that's what he said. It's not really a waiver item. If you want to, certainly you can ask for a waiver, but the problem there was about clarity and really understanding the grading the way it was.
If I could keep the waiver, if we have to readjust for clarity, we will, and we'll be happy to work with you guys.
There shouldn't be a problem with that.
Mr. Chair, you should be aware that under our saldo waivers, in land development matters and in major subdivisions require that the joining owners of the property be notified of the waiver, so that if they would want to come to this hearing and object about the waiver or somehow talk about the waiver, they can do so. And Land Tech has supplied with the township a copy of all of the letters that have been sent to the neighbors, along with the certified mail receipts verifying that they've been notified. So I don't know if anyone is here that wants to discuss these waivers on behalf of property owners, but if not, that requirement of our ordinance has been met.
Is there anybody here that is objecting to any of these waivers? If not, forever hold your peace. I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made by Frank Klein,
Second.
second by Randy Crane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Great, thank you for your time, thank you very much, and I hope I made it before the 3 minutes expire.
And
You have 10 seconds left.
Good job.
I'll prepare a salvo waiver document that attaches your letter and that requires a sign off on it. So that'll come to you in due course.
Great, thank you very much.
You know, Cindy, I was really liking this clock. Thank you.
They're recommended, they're not approved.
It's
And just so we're clear, my engineer just reminded me that these are recommendations.
I freaked out.
They're not approvals. This commission can only approve scale modifications.
Your gavel.
Not anything else. So you'll have to come to a supervisor's meeting and present your position with respect to these saldo waivers. When I say you or your applicant, or someone in the event a question is asked, we don't want that to be just hanging out there and then the supervisors say, oh, well, no one's here, so we're not gonna act on it, you know, so.
Understood, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for everything. We'll move right along. We have on the agenda, discussion on the well ordinance.
Not gonna be here.
Is there anybody who would like to discuss the well ordinance here at the commission? Have you all looked at it?
Yes.
I have a couple questions.
A couple questions by Mr. Crane.
So, one thing is the updated construction standards. I'm wondering like how much that would add cost-wise to construction. There's a sentence in here that says, "A good addition is a well ordinance officer for oversight and record keeping." So is that creating a position?
Is
I
that
don't
a
know.
new hire? Is that,
That's what I'm trying to,
yeah, do you really need another person on the payroll?
We were gonna try to utilize Scott.
Well, but then he still he's not working for nothing.
Right.
He's not gonna work for nothing. Whether we're paying Scott or paying somebody else, he's still.
no, we're saying in here it says a good addition is a well ordinance officer. Is that creating a new position in the township?
That's Scott though, right, Dave? Scott.
We want to utilize
Do you
Scott.
want me to answer that, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Should we put you on the clock?
My name's Dave Freeman. I'm the liaison for the Well Ordinance Committee. Yes, a new position would be created, but his expense would be covered by fees. His primary purpose is to go out and inspect the site, make sure that it is not near the sewage or anything, and also to make sure that these wells are properly located, because we have numerous wells in this township, we don't know where they are. And there's a state database that he would make sure that this well is located in. So there's no additional cost to the township because everything, all expenses will be covered by the fees when you go to,
Fees from where?
when you get your well permit and such. And there's also a schedule of fees that's presented that determines what's going to be done and the fee that would be allocated to that particular function.
Do you know how much the fee is?
I have them, I don't know if I, do we have them on us? No. Do we have them in the office, Cindy? Can you run get it again, please? There is a fee schedule for what the well officer has to do and what, any actions that you have to take. Like if it's a
Mr. Chair, while Ms. Beck is going to get the fee schedule,
Should I stop the clock?
you can address the Cloverleaf Saddle Club matter, which I think they want tabled. Which we did not. Cloverleaf Saddle Club. I think they wanted that tabled.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We bypassed that because they told me it was tabled. I will take a motion to table the Cloverleaf Saddle. That's what they requested.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion been made by Frank, second by Randy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Now it's officially tabled. Sorry. I'm getting old. Oop, I can start the clock again. Cindy's back.
Thank you.
David, you're a supervisor. I won't put you on the clock.
Oh, thank you.
I was
Executive
just-
privilege?
I was pulling your strings. Okay.
So, here's, if you want to pass this.
Just tell us what the numbers are.
Yeah.
I can read the fees.
Cindy, could we each have a copy of that one,
New
the next,
construction.
not right now.
What was done previously with
All
new
right, so
construction?
that all the
Someone was
commissioners have a
inspecting.
copy. So for in the future,
Someone was going out and inspecting and making sure the well
Know
and
what
septic
that
were
is.
far enough apart and
But not as much detail.
not as much detail.
oftentimes people ask us, that's a legitimate question, what are the fees? And if we don't know, so I asked Cindy to distribute a fee list to all of us. So,
Previous and new.
previous and new. Yeah, well,
See how much they went up, yeah.
we need to know how much they've gone up and what we're asking for.
No, well, for class one, the application review is $75 and the site inspection is $75. Now, like a class one is less than 500 gallons per day. At class two, which is 500 to 2,000 gallons per day, the application review is $75, the plot plan review is $75, the site inspection is $75. For class three, which is greater than 2,000 gallons per day, the application review is $75, the plot plan review is $75, and the site inspection, one time, is $150. Their emergency permits can be applied for, and they are $150. And like I said, the well enforcement officers, there'll be Scott Paliselli, he's also our sewage enforcement officer. I'd asked him already, he said yes, he would take the position. And I think it would be good because he can basically be killing two birds with one stone. And like I said, it's essential that we know where these wells are in the township. Currently, the system that is used isn't getting into the database as it should.
So even the new construction would not be accounted for?
Pardon?
Like recent new construction?
No, anything that from henceforth, from now on, but like I said, it'd be
Previous.
almost impossible to go out and find all the wells in this township now.
Yeah. So someone wasn't monitoring new construction 10 years ago and checking the wells and,
They might have been doing it, but it wasn't getting in the database.
okay. Interesting.
Any other questions from other commissioners?
No, I'm fine. I sat on the well committee.
Mr. Potter was a member of the board, so.
Well, so
So
you're,
all these fees so that they can put it in the
any
database?
recommendations? Nothing? It was merely a discussion, so we're not.
I understand that, we presented this, we're still waiting for the recommendation of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, they're going over it now. We had two well drillers come in, we had a Zoom meeting with Geo Services, we had someone from the Penn State come in and talk to us. So, we sat down, we put a lot of work in this, and Dr. Cole put a lot of effort into this well ordinance.
What's the large quantity use?
That would be class 3, and anything over 2,000 gallons per day.
Anything over 2,000? So if we had like,
I mean,
someone came in and they started, a bottling company and put big wells in,
the thing is with the more you take out, the more oversight you get. When our previous well ordinance was 29 pages, as individuals, we had to adhere to that 29-page ordinance. If a developer came in with either, I think it was a minor, either a major subdivision, they filled out one permit and they're able to go drill wells without any supervision because there was a loophole where the well ordinance was not applied to the zoning ordinance. So even if the developer came in and said, all right, I want to play by the rules, and he looks at the zoning ordinance, there's nothing there for wells. This mitigates that. This will be a standalone ordinance. So if somebody comes in, they don't have to refer to the zoning. Here's the well ordinance. Here's what you have to abide by.
Excuse me, the well ordinance does not adhere to municipal order.
No, it depends if it's I think the exact wording, any developer comes in with a major subdivision, if he looked in the zoning book, under well ordinance, there's nothing there. He fills out his one permit, he's allowed to do what he wants without any oversight. That was one of the loopholes that was never applied to the zoning ordinance. And like I said, the more water you take out, the more oversight you get. We don't limit the water you can take out. When you're drawing more water, there's more regulations and oversight. Like when you drive a car, you just get a driver's license. When you drive a rig, you have a bigger rig, more responsibilities. You have to get a CDL and certain training and everything else.
Okay.
And if the bigger wells are governed by the DRBC or whatever, we're just asking for copies of all the paperwork that they're submitted to DRBC or whatever in the new ordinance. The old ordinance, it wasn't addressed.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody?
Does it address failed wells?
Pardon?
Does it address failed wells? A well, if there's a well that's failed. Like if one of these houses needs a new well because their well.
Yeah, any new well will now have fall under the ordinance.
Or I should say abandoned wells.
Oh, abandoned wells. Well, you're supposed to cap your abandoned wells, and that's the problem in the township. We don't know where the wells are. This, from henceforth, if we have this well ordinance, we will know where the wells are drilled. Because Scott will come out with his, cell phone or whatever, take a GPS reading, and then he can have a specific location on that well, and it can be entered in the database.
And that is something that I wanted to follow up on. More critical was the private wells, because we have no idea. Because like where Dollar General is now,
Yep.
they have 4 abandoned wells in there before they hit a good well. Right on 611, a new Dollar General to us, but we have no records of them, and the state has no records of them. So I wanted to go back and try to get all of our Class 1 wells, like kind of where we're at, how many we have, but to find them now, I mean, we know where all the houses are. We're what, 2,700 dwellings in the township? Somewhere around there?
We'd have to hire somebody.
We have records of 180, wasn't it, Charlie? There's 180 on record for the township?
I forget the exact number.
Yeah, 180 or 220, and we have 2,700 dwellings in the township.
And that's probably not counting the old hand-dug wells by the farmers.
Right. So our system is like way out of adequacy. But I wanted to follow up more on the new, but we encompass, the Class 2s and the Class 3s. But in our part, I mean, the township doesn't even have the Class 1s taken care of yet.
And a comment on that, as far as getting them in the record, we discussed the possibility of having an intern come in, say, and hire them for the summer at some minimum wage thing, that they can go out and do what Jim's talking about doing, survey and trying to get them into the database. Any well that you drill in Pennsylvania is supposed to go into the DCNR and the Geologic Surveys database. Well, we found, as Jim pointed out here, there's a tremendous number that never made it in there. And they have wells we the properties, there's probably 15 wells drilled, and nobody has a record of them. And you mentioned the one up at Dollar General where there's 4. These are a hazard to the groundwater and people's health.
How do they find them?
How do we find them?
Yeah.
Somebody needs to go out and talk to the owner, talk to the well drillers in the township, and try and get an informal report. Many times they're not gonna be willing to speak up and blow the whistle on somebody who they drilled wells for and nothing has been filed. So there's a big area where there's a lot of information needs to be put in, and I think we have done a yeoman's work over the past year and a half. There were 5 of us on the committee, and we took the old ordinance, which was just for private residences, and we added the minor subdivisions, major subdivisions, and wells that would be same as a major subdivision, up above 2,000 gallons per day. And trying to interface with public water supply. Once you're a public supplier, or when you drill a well and you supply 15 different connections or 25 people more than whatever number of days it is, 60 days a year, it becomes a public water supply. And now EPA regulations kick in. We would interface with that so that we're not trying to supersede what EPA is doing, but to share information.
And it should be noticed, this does not restrict development. If anything, I think it would help development, because a developer can come in and say, you know, he's gonna be guaranteed a reliable source of water.
So what's gonna happen to the hand dug well guys, you know, the farmer, are they gonna be grandfathered in?
They're just there, they're just grandfathered in, you know,
Okay,
but,
and
you
it's
know,
just on record then, okay.
yeah.
Any further questions? Nothing?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything else. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Third, fourth.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting.